In this episode, I talked to one of my favorite storyteller camera review YouTubers, Cesar Lorca. Now, Cesar is a fitness filmmaker, but he's much more than just that. Recently, in the past few months, he's been starting to post more and more consistently on YouTube, talking about camera reviews and tech, but in a different way. Cesar's been getting really into high-level storytelling tips and tricks and tactics that he's been pitting into his YouTube videos. And in this episode, we talk all about that. The story tips, the story structures, how he tells a story while reviewing camera gear, which is not really common even on my channel. And I'm learned so much from Cesar in this episode, how to tell stories while reviewing camera gear. Without further ado, let's dive right in. But I'm going to let him kind of dive in and to explain on who he is, what he does, before we get into today's conversation and topic all about storytelling on YouTube.
First off, thanks for having me on. And so I'm Cesar Lorca. I'm a filmmaker based out of Miami, Florida, and I've been working in the fitness industry for around 8 years now. And I've been making mini docs and campaigns for an international fitness company since then. So that's like my strong suit. When it comes to filmmaking, I guess. I love storytelling, and that's where my bread and butter is. So if you got a story, I'd love to tell it.
Yeah, for sure. And you've been in the fitness industry for quite some time. You were also used to be extremely jacked. I mean, you're still jacked now, but humble. I get that, but he is. I've seen him in person, and he's ripped. That's besides the point. So you've been in the fitness industry, for how long now?
Around 8 years.
8 years, but lately you've been slowly transitioning, especially on YouTube, talking a lot about kind of cameras, different things, vintage lenses, Lumix cameras. What was that transition to starting to do more YouTube-based content for yourself?
Honestly, man, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to camera gear. So, like everyone else, I'm into the specs. I'm into nerding out, sitting there watching 3, 4, 5 YouTube videos before I make a purchase. And honestly, I thought, why not just jump in and try to make some stuff myself and kind of do it in my own voice. So that was kind of like the beginning of everything for me. I got a Lumix camera, I think seven years ago. I started on Canon, and then like a year later I got a GH5, and I started nerding out about all the specs, like the 60 FPS and the GH5 and all this, and I was like, oh my god, I love this stuff. And then it just got worse and worse and worse, you know? And yeah, or better and better, whatever
for
you
sure.
want to title it.
Yeah,
know?
Specs have been getting kind of crazy lately in cameras. But so you started getting into Lumix cameras 7 years ago. And when did you start posting like semi-consistently? I know we've talked off camera trying for you wanting to post more consistently. When did that start taking place? And then I want to dive more into talking about how you craft your stories on YouTube, because if you guys haven't seen any of Cesar's YouTube videos or his review videos or his lens videos, they are something completely different and something completely unique, I feel like, on YouTube right now, which is something I envy and I'm very jealous of, but I'm also like, dude, it's so sick. So when did that whole process starting to make more filmmaking content on YouTube?
I think it's been within like the last 6 months. I've really trying to dive in a little harder into YouTube, because like at first I was making like a video once every 2 months, once every 3 months, like not very often, and it was kind of hard for me to find my voice and the way that I kind of wanted to tell like the stories, and how like trying to find my own style at the time. So I feel like I've finally crashed into like a little road that I like, and I've been trying to push that a little more, and it's been really fun, and the audience has been, it's hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes some videos don't do good, sometimes some do good, and that's just the nature of YouTube, I think. But at the end of the day, it's just really fun for me, and I see them almost as like practice projects. So my intros, I try to like really dive in hard into the intros, and I use that almost as like cinematography practice, and then I just throw the practice out on YouTube, and if someone likes it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And I cry sometimes, but it's fun.
So yeah, let's dive into that, because your YouTube videos, especially your intros and everything, you know, from the Lumix Collective video, I was like, wow, this is like top level notch quality. Then you did that 100mm lens review video, which that's like that intro in itself was one of probably the best intros for that lens review that I've seen be done. So let's kind of dive into that process. What is that process of starting to create a new video? Are you working on a 28 to 200 mil
I
video?
am.
Okay.
Yeah.
When will that be released?
Hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, cool.
So
Well, this might be released in 2 weeks, so maybe people can see it, and I'll link it below.
yeah.
But what is that process for starting a video completely start from fresh? What's that process for you? Let's start diving into that.
So the way I approach my YouTube videos is I think about it as a story, right? So instead of being like, today we're going to talk about this 28 to 200, I try to think about it as if I don't know how I shape it. Like the 100 millimeter, I'm like, lenses come in all shapes and sizes, but this one is bite sized. So I start off with one sentence that I feel like could start like a trickle effect on how I'm going to start shaping the rest of the story. And then off that one sentence, I just start thinking of the script more and more and more. And I just script from A to Z. And when I get to the end of like this, there's this always area that I get to where I'm like, I don't know what to say anymore. And I know this is going to take way too many hours to finish making this section of the video. So right there is when I stop the intro or like a specific part of the video, and then I just jump into like free form. I just sit in front of the camera and just blab at it. But I script everything from A to Z. And I have a couple tools that I use that help me with that, and one of them is Milanote. And to be able to get like a visual representation of what I want the video to look like. And I've been using these cards called storyteller tactics to be able to help me shape a story with like a form. And like two of my favorite ones, I actually have them saved here for you. So first one is 3 is the magic number, and it basically just talks about how people can't remember more than 3 things without having to make a list. So I try to revolve everything around 3 of the most important things that would help someone, and then I developed a story around that. And the second one is good and evil, which is I used on one of my latest videos, which was is the Lumix S5 2X good for photographers. And the good thing is that I'm comfortable in the filmmaking niche, and the evil thing is that I used to love photography, but now I used to think it was easy, so I developed a story around that. If you watch the video, you can see how I shaped it around those 2 concepts.
Wow. You dive real deep. So how do you kind of balance that between, talking about the technical specs of a product, say the 100 mil or that 28 to 200, with storytelling? So it seems like you have those couple techniques. Is there anything else that you do on top of that, or is it mainly, the focusing on 3 things to get out of this story, or focusing on the good and evil?
The second largest video I fully did on Milanote with you shot deck and Milanote, and it worked. So I guess
Which video was that?
Every filmmaker needs this vintage lens.
Okay. Yeah.
But going back to your question, how do I balance like the technical specs? I kind of just use like the 3 main things that I feel like is important to the creator, and that's obviously gives the most value to them, and then I just shape it around that, because there's only so much. Like if we could talk about 10-bit and raw and all this, but the majority of people aren't really going to need that. So 10-bit, yeah, but I just stick to the things that actually matter, and I just spoon feed it to you in the most authentic and easy to digest way. And I don't know, I just try to make something that I feel like I would want to watch and I'd be entertained by, instead of like falling asleep,
For sure. And did you do this in your recent video that's coming out with a 28 to 200?
That one, right now it's kind of still bare bones, so I'm still
Okay.
on the scripting phase of it. But
Gotcha.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Because I would be curious, like, what would like if you were taking, let's just give an example, like a video on the S5 2X, which you've already done. If you had to give 3 things for that, what would those 3 things that you would want to try to spoon feed and tell the audience to be?
I think the autofocus, the color science, and maybe the frame weight, the frame rate. or frame rates that it has, or the fact that it's full frame. Like probably those three things. I feel like those actually matter to people. So
Yeah, we're going to dive into this. So, just kind of exploring some of the techniques for you, Caesar. You kind of mentioned how you love, you know, telling stories within the reviews and the review videos. What do you find as one of the biggest challenges throughout this process of, trying to craft a story when it's just talking about camera gear? And I know there's like so many specs and so many things that you can mention, but since you've boiled it down to telling like three things, talk about the good and evil, or use storytelling tips and practices, what is one of the biggest challenges you kind of face whenever you're making, a YouTube review video for filmmaking camera gear in such a unique way that really hasn't been done before?
the challenge I face the most often is finding a story that'll fit into the topic that I'm talking about. So when I got the 100 millimeter lens, like obviously we know like it's macro and it's 2.8 and whatever, but the hardest part for me was trying to find a way to turn that into a story. And then I was like, it's kind of funny that it's small, you know? And then I'm like, I'm going to revolve around the fact that it's small and tell the story around that. Mending the two worlds of specs and a story is the hardest part. Like finding the story that actually fits for that is honestly the hardest part. But once you get it and the ball starts rolling, you're just like, oh, this is fun. This is cool, you know?
Yeah, no, that's great. And on the flip side, sort of like what you just mentioned there, what are some of the biggest rewards from that? Like both professionally speaking and personally speaking, once you kind of figure out, you create the review and create the story together, what does those biggest rewards look like to you once the project is finished? Or even if you during the process of creating these stories?
Um, I just love that it's fun. So the entire process, it's like a think tank, and you know me, I'm like super hyperactive and stuff. So being able to sit down and actually like focus and hone that into like a little story and shape it is, and seeing the end product and then seeing people actually enjoy it, that is what does it for me. I don't care if it gets 100 views. I don't care if it gets 50 views. Seeing that people are like, yo, this was like cool, and oh, you inspired me to pick up a camera, and all that stuff, that's when I'm like, okay, so this is worth it. And the other part that's very fun for me is like that vintage video lens that I made. It was authentic to my life because I basically just took everybody through, hey, I wanted this 50 millimeter lens really bad. Oh, but I already have one. It's on my Canon A1. Why don't I just adapt it and take it on a trip with me? And then you see me in a museum, me with my family, and the whole thing is shot with that. And I feel like it gives it like a certain level of personality. Like it's you're coming with me, and I want you to meet everybody. I want you to meet me and what my day to day life looks like. But just elevate it a little past a vlog, I guess. And I love that. That's my favorite thing, and that's what I love seeing now on YouTube. Like a lot of the newer generation, they're very authentic. They tell their stories, their struggles, and that that wave that's coming or it's happening now is I love it. Honestly, I love it.
Yeah. So there's actually two areas that I want to kind of transition here. One is going to be talking, and which we'll touch point on a little bit, which is talking about that YouTube side, what success looks like for you. But I kind of like how you just mentioned that this new generation of YouTube videos, YouTubers, this Gen Z, if you want to call them, are coming into the platform. And how do you kind of see, specifically on the filmmaking side, filmmaking reviews, how do you see them starting to change in the future going forward? And what would you recommend to people that want to get into the filmmaking review industry on YouTube to do that's different than what's already been people have been doing or have been done?
Yeah, I think the new generation is they're more worried about authenticity and telling a story through the whole entire process, and it's pretty refreshing to see, honestly, because we're used to like if people sit in front of a camera and they try to show their best light, but the new wave is they're not afraid to like talk about how they're feeling and what's happening, if they're good, they're bad, like everything that's happening, and they tell it through a story that's cinematic, especially with people who are like 18. I've seen 17, 18-year-olds telling incredible stories, shot incredibly well, with super cheap gear, and the backbone of everything is a solid story, and it's been really nice to see. And it looks like all of this is like starting to mesh together, you know? So it's entertaining, and you're telling there's substance to it, I guess. Like, instead of just showing someone how to use a product or whatever, you could show them what that product could do, and then you mend in a little bit of that technical spec in there. And I feel like that's the next thing happening, and just focus on story. We've been telling stories since we've been cavemen, you know. We'd sit around campfires and ooga booga, we caught a deer, you know. So like, it's in our system already. So just lean into that.
Yeah, I feel like it's cool. I mean, I feel like there's also a place for the sit down. Some people just like hearing personalities of like, this is what this all does.
Yeah.
Here's all of that, you know, the Gerald Undones.
Yeah.
But then I think it is cool to also see like, it's not just a review, but it's kind of actually using the gear in practical scenarios, in real life examples, in, if we say the word, cinematic setups, or with actual lighting conditions and in controlled scenarios where you would actually use this equipment in, and like showing off the capabilities to an extreme versus, you know, an autofocus test where people just walk up to the camera, which I mean, I've done in numerous videos, so I'm guilty of that. But what does success then look for you? Like, I know it's a lot of the time you consider these as passion projects, but I also know that you have the ambitious goal of hitting 10K subs by the end of the year as well. So what does success kind of look for you on videos? And do you look at the analytics to make changes, or are you mostly just focus on a video and run with that video? Or do you look at analytics and change things as you go?
I'd be lying to you if I told you I don't look at the analytics. And in the beginning, I had like an unhealthy balance with it, and I would look at it way too much, and it would honestly make me not want to make as many videos. And I stripped that back a ton, and I'm just like, I'm not here for the validation. I'm here to just make passion projects that are meaningful to me and that will add value to somebody else. And ultimately, if it gets 50 to 100 views and somebody picks something out of it, that's good enough for me. But obviously, it's kind of dumb to have do something and not have a goal, you know? So that's kind of why I have like that 10K goal, just to be able to like grow and chase after something. And if it doesn't happen, I don't really care, because I'm having fun through the whole entire process. So yeah, I just see this as like a creative outlet, and it's been working, and I've been able to meet cool people like you and Josh and all these people through it. So the number doesn't matter. Man. I just care about the people that really resonate and the friendships I've made. So that's been the best part, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like it's really cool. And I mean, I think it would be cool to dive into sort of talking about what Lumix has been doing with creators too. I think that's just a special conversation, especially during a Lumix Creators podcast. But success, this is all a passion project. Do you have any big ambitions with YouTube in the future? Would you eventual goals to be a filmmaking YouTuber? Is that what your hopes and dreams are in the future, or stay in kind of this fitness niche industry of filmmaking, or a bit of both?
I would like to balance both. I would honestly love to have like a big audience that I could share more insights as my career progresses. And I just want to be a funnel, basically, of whatever I learn, I hope that I could funnel into other people's brains. So that's what my goal is. And I don't want to give other people, like, let's say I get an email being like, yo, here's this cool freaking thing, and I don't feel like it's worth it. I don't want to just give it to people because it's somebody's like trying to give it to me. Like, I just want to give value, the most value, towards the audience, either if it's entertaining, educating, or what is it?
Entertaining, educating, or
being
inspiring.
An edutainer.
Oh, edutainer.
Yeah. Both of them together.
Both of them together. Well, there's inspiring too, but yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically it. I don't remember the original question.
Yeah, man. I feel like it's been so cool, like seeing your journey, like I feel like you got just introduced and connected to the whole Lumix Creators Club, in May or something, or February last year?
I think it was February, yeah.
Yeah, February, but then you finally got the camera and started working with Lumix come around June, and then there's the Lumix Collective trip. So what has that experience been like, using Lumix cameras for a numerous 7 years of time, and then finally getting to actually work with, the camera company that you already been using those cameras. What has that experience been like from your perspective?
That feels like something that I've already been a super fanboy of Lumix from the beginning, and getting into that and then being nurtured as a creator, basically being like, hey, here's these tools and we appreciate that you've supported us, so we're going to support you. That has been like the nail in the coffin for me. I'm like, I love this brand. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. I love you. And it's been such an incredible experience because it's not just a brand. It's like they actually harvest a community. So they brought us all together. We're all like-minded people. We're all Lumix fanboys.
And fangirls for the
and
four girls that showed up.
Fangirls. Yeah. So it's been really cool to be able to get brought out to these things, see things that are happening before the general population knows, like the 100mm lens. Like we found out about that on that trip and we're like, oh, we got to keep this in. We can't tell anybody, like.
I know, it's so exciting, like the information or the insights that we get, and like obviously we're all signed NDA, so we can't say anything, but it is cool to see that side of Lumix valuing creators' opinions, especially within the last like 2 years, more so than ever before. I think it is cool though that how they've been asking us, our personal opinions and asking our thoughts on what they can be improving on in, future cameras, and like what things that we want to see in these cameras, and they actually take into consideration, and they would want our honest thoughts on, if something kind of sucks in your camera, they're cool with us telling them what sucks and what needs to be better. Hence Face Detect took a long time, but at the same time, they've been working on it for so many years before they actually released it. I just think it's so cool to be on that insight from that perspective.
The one memory that's like burned in my brain is like all of us in that meeting telling them like, hey, these are the things that we want to see in future cameras, and the engineer just like, sorry, I almost cursed, just typing away. I was like, oh, so they actually listen,
Yeah. I think it was cool because it was like, I remember something like I specifically said something like that I wanted to see in a camera, and then like the engineer came up to me like afterwards because they had like more questions about like, hey, what was that? Why would you want that? And they like specifically are like, yeah, let's make these cameras some of the best professional consumer cameras, to date. And it's like, once they release that next full frame flagship camera, that's probably going to be a beast of a camera itself. Do you have any hopes that you are hoping for a future flagship camera?
Oh yeah, like I pray that there's something in the works, and the collective brains we had at the Lumix Collective, everything that we brought up, specifically you, I hope they jump it into this monster of a camera and just shakes the market. And yeah, I hope we get one before everybody else.
I know, aren't we all hoping that? Yeah, no, it's hopefully. I mean, I'm screaming from the top of the rooftop that we just need to open gate 60 frames a second. That's my one thing. I'm like, everything else, chef's kiss, but that's like I'm praying for.
Yeah,
that's all I'm hoping for. So kind of landing the plane here, Cesar. What advice that would you want to give to future filmmakers, future YouTubers, future people that want to kind of just get into this industry? What advice would you want to give to that specific person? Also the people that want to tell better stories like you do on your channel, what advice would you be giving to those type of people?
Just jump in. Don't be afraid. Jump in. Be authentic to your own voice and turn that voice into a story. I'm going to scream it at the top of my lungs. Get this. It's like 60 cards basically telling you how to make a story, and just sit there alone, think about whatever topic you're thinking about, and just write that down using one of these frameworks, and you'll have a good time. I promise you. And your videos will change. And use these in docs in your professional work too. I've used some of these for a doc that I just shot, and the storytelling shaping of that doc is completely different compared to the last ones I've shot without them. So yeah, just do that. Jump in, be you, tell a good story. That's basically all I got.
Awesome. And where can people find you and see where all your YouTube stuff is? There will be links in the description, but where can people find you?
Cesar Lorca _ on Instagram and just Cesar Lorca on YouTube. And you might have to look for me because I only have 2,000 subscribers, so just scroll a little bit, you'll find me.
Well, it's time to get the tags going. Well, awesome, man. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Lumix Creators Podcast.
Love you.
I'm so stoked to have Cesar on the podcast episode. If you want to check out any of his work, the links are always in the description below. And without further ado, I'll see you guys in the next one.